let's tackle some of the viewer questions that came in while we were going over the patch notes. So let's see here. So Nathaniel Wagner asks, can Plague Hearts remain dormant forever if you just avoid the plague zones and you never step into their territory at all? So there's no timer, nothing, no backstop, nothing saying, well, eventually the player has to get attacked. No, you really can just keep them asleep.
We experimented with that. We did have some timers that kicked on at certain intervals, or like certainly if you were trying to progress your legacy, you need to take out the plague hearts and certain things. But at the end of the day, the mantra was for update 33 was put in the player's hands to control the tempo of their game. If they want to go wake up 20 plague hearts and on lethal, and do we even have 20? But just wake up every single plague heart and then have a blast for 5 minutes until you die. Go for it. If you want to carefully loot the entire map before you wake up a single plague heart, that's me. You can still absolutely do that too. So it's really up to you to dictate the pace of your map.
So we did get a question from Zach the Zombie that we already answered earlier in the stream, which is, when I try to summon somebody to the legacy pool, it says unbound. Why? And that is because we changed the key binding, and there's a chance that some players may have a setup where they have to hit, like Brandon was saying before, they've got to hit reset to defaults on the control settings, and that will put it back to normal. I just wanted to read that again because I wanted Zach the Zombie to get credit for asking the question. Let's see here. Yeah, so Sejao is one of probably multiple people who've asked about the Haven device being nerfed, basically. And, I think we've already answered the question, but I don't know, Randy, do you want to give a quick little summary of, how we're feeling about the Haven device and what people should do if they got really used to the Haven device and now they want to have the same advantage over the Hordes?
We agonized over the Haven device a lot. We did a lot of digging into it. The problem was essentially is that it just didn't work after we made all the changes, and it just didn't do anything anymore. The old mission that it would bypass and all these things didn't exist anymore. So all the fun we had to think around outside the box there. We did look at how many communities actually even had the Haven device installed. It was pretty low single digits. We looked at the total cost of running it, and tried to see if we couldn't take some of that and put that into the radio calls and all that. We knew that there would be some people who weren't happy that it just doesn't bypass sieges anymore. But it couldn't do what it did before. We had to make some changes. So we liked it where it landed in terms of it providing a benefit both to away from base sieges. So if you're not present there, it'll clear a wave and you don't get any consequences. We like that. We like it still killing at least a wave's amount of zombies before it goes on cooldown in person. If you have feedback on it, feel free to shoot it at us for sure. We're still listening and collecting all that. It didn't survive. The original design did not survive the CU33.
So Sejao specifically called out the 15-minute cooldown. They felt like that was a little dramatic, and they felt like that they would prefer the cooldown to be a little bit shorter. I'm curious. I don't know, having not used the Haven device yet in the new setting, I don't really know much about the feel of that. I'm curious how you feel about the timing of that.
So part of this is that, as Randy pointed out, we've changed how infestations in general function, right? And then also how sieges in general function. And so what we did was we took the way that we ended up balancing it is we took it to we took a moment to look at how many zombies came in the first wave. So it was very much tied to the siege balance that was there. And so when you're away from base, the Haven device will negate the entire first wave. Mm-hmm. And so the idea was that the Haven device, if you're there in person, should have a similar result, right? And so we went with approximately 18 to 20, and that's enough for the first wave anywhere.
So it kills 18 to 20 zombies, and then it goes on a 15-minute cooldown, which means that the siege will probably be done by the time that cooldown comes back and it's killing zombies again.
Right. So that's what we were trying to preserve, was the balance of the new siege system.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Now, the problem that I pointed out earlier is that it does also kill these ambient zombies, but that goes towards the count of its cooldown, which some people might think is problematic. But as I also pointed out earlier, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the screamers will pull in the ambient zombies to your base during a siege.
Isn't there like a second timer to prevent that from happening? There's like a second timer.
There's a cooldown reset timer that we put in that's pretty generous now. So we're trying to balance it to such that we see those concerns, and I know that there's other concerns about, if you put a watchtower in your base, it increases the radius, which increases the range of varies. There's a lot of knock-on effects on this, so for sure keep all the questions and weird situations that you get into with the Haven device coming, for sure.
Yeah. We'll be listening and keeping track of that stuff, and
I'm not going to promise anything, but
yeah, traditionally we don't promise specific answers to specific problems until we know we've got a solution. But definitely, I mean, the way to have us take notice is to continue to provide that feedback to us. So we really appreciate it, and we want to know the experiences you're having. And we're not done with this game yet, so there's always lots of opportunities for us to continue to address things if people are having trouble with them. So when we were talking about the fact that plague hearts are not listening to literal noises, they're not giant ears, as Randy said. Something Viscid pointed out that do firecrackers occasionally cause minor damage to zombies, and could a firecracker potentially damage a zombie and help wake up a plague heart? I genuinely don't know. I'm curious if anyone here does.
Don't know if they have damage. I'm going to look real quick here.
Okay,
if they have a damage value. I am also curious.
Yeah, while he's looking that up, Bob Cadaver had a question. Why are some of the hearts visible on Trumbull Valley on the lethal zone on a fresh start? I noticed that too, actually. I had 2 hearts visible from the very outset when I started my lethal zone game in Trumbull Valley, and I wasn't sure why they were visible. Do we know? Is that just potentially a bug, or is that intentional in some way?
I think it's just a long-standing bug. I know that the starter or the tutorial does reveal the starter one. I think it just might be a knock-on from that.
Okay, so that is a known issue.
There is something in is it Cascade specifically after you do Osprey? There is it's Providence Ridge, right?
There is a when you move on to Providence Ridge from Osprey, there is definitely at least one plague heart that's revealed then. So maybe there's a similar thing going on in Trumbull. Yeah, I could see there, because Trumbull has got all these missions, for instance, that get initiated. I could see there being something where certain sites get revealed because of initializing missions, and maybe that's showing you where plague hearts are. I'm genuinely not certain, but it does something. Yeah, so we're all acknowledging that is a weird thing that happens. It's not intentional. I don't know. Maybe we'll figure it out someday. Fred Garvin has a very important question for Randy, which is, what is on that ball cap?
One of my favorite cryptids, the Mothman.
Oh, okay, cool. I was actually going to guess Bigfoot, but I was wrong. I couldn't see it from here. So
it's here. We'll get close.
Oh, there it goes. There. We can totally see. Well, so earlier on, when we were negotiating with Discord to figure out how we were going to get everyone's faces on the screen, we had a version of this presentation where Randy was pixelated within an inch of his life, and there's no way you would have been able to identify Mothman. But luckily, we were able to make that work a little bit better.
The question would have been like, what's with Randy's weird hair?
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. Oh, Surreal Diagonal says, if your actions that would wake up a heart are spaced out over a long period of time, does it take more actions to wake it up?
Indeed, it does.
So is there like a cooldown on the number of actions, or like it says, oh, you've accumulated this much, but do they start ticking down again if you don't do anything for a while?
So yes, while Plague Hearts once awakened won't go dormant again, Plague Heart that is awakening will eventually reset back to 0 if you leave it alone. So that is something to keep in mind for sure. There's a big strategy around like making one oopsie and then backing out is. You're gonna buy all that time back without having to do much.
In one of our updates, we added a sleep psychology trait and skill to the game, and Sidechat the Gray suggests that if you've got a sleep psychologist, they should be able to put hearts back to sleep.
I love the idea. We would have to balance it and do some work for sure on the design side, but
It's not something a trade is
I've
typically
seen-
capable of doing. So yeah.
I've seen so many people talk about ingenious ways to fit in fiction.
Yeah.
Sleeping plague heart.
We should add like a singing skill that lets you like sing lullabies to put them back to sleep or something like that.
Or I mean, just some sort of like round that requires you to use medicine and plague samples, and then you just like inject the heart with sleep medicine, puts it back to sleep.
Just NyQuil.
Yeah, just walk up and dump it all over the heart.
Let's see here. So, sorry, I've got a long one. Peroxicus has a long question, and I haven't read it yet, so I'm going to read it, and I don't know if it's going to be one we can answer. This update did such a good job at taking seemingly random pieces and tying them together via the narrative that I've been thinking of for the game as a whole. The part I don't yet know is, has it been stated where the plague hearts came from, or what created them? Or is that something that maybe could be revealed in a future update? I don't think we've got an answer to that. I think that
I don't think we have a hard answer. I think Heartland, if you play Heartland and you talk to
like Dr. Hoffman and
right, I think there's some discussion the plague walls and certain plague structures and how that works, but I don't think we get very explicit.
Yeah, I think most of the time, like the way what we try to do in our lore is less about trying to answer questions like that and more about just having the characters around you be asking them alongside you, so that we acknowledge that those questions are there. But we usually don't try to give you the answers, because it's kind of the vibe of the game, I think, is better if it's mysterious, if it's like we don't know where this is coming from, but it's trying to kill us and we have to survive. It's kind of a better environment than I'm Sherlock Holmes and I'm trying to decode, what's going on. So Vikia asks, why did the preview of lootable items from a plague heart disappear? That's something I hadn't noticed. So, like, did we used to show information about a plague heart's loot that we now are no longer showing, maybe because we have other things we need to show in that UI as well? Or do you two know much about what's going on there?
I do know there's situations where enough stuff was in the flyout that it could like get truncated to the point of where it was just going off the screen. And I think every single plague heart had that in them. So I think we just came down to like the point where just show the stuff that is variation of what is possible in a plague heart, because it's going to have a gun, it's going to have a backpack, it's going to have like,
that's true. Yeah, it was consistent enough that maybe that wasn't the most important information, and since we were adding so much more information to that flyout, it made sense to maybe cull the thing that was a little bit less useful. So that's probably the best answer you're going to get, and that makes a lot of sense. Let's see here. So this
does not look like firecrackers deal damage.
Okay, good. Okay,
but they totally do on stream. I just showed I dropped a firecracker at the heart of a sleeping, at the foot of a plague. Yeah, it woke it up because it does little to tiny.
I was about to say
damage.
there's no damage, but there is a fire, and it is creating a little
it
fire.
Probably set it slightly on fire, and that caused damage. That makes sense.
So I think
because it used to be that there was an exploit with road flares or firecrackers or whatever you wanted. It might even still be there, and then you take like a bloater gas grenade, you drop the firecrackers, you drop the bloater gas grenade, and that would completely and it would just obliterate a heart.
Yeah.
So anyway, if it's still in there, I'm so sorry that I just told you how to cheese our entire game. However,
don't tell them about the bait, or that's going to be a nightmare.
The infestation bait where you throw it on the...
Yeah. Okay, so...
Yeah, that new one.
So O wants to know, have we been looking at the wish list recently? So basically, we do go back and look at the wish list all the time whenever we're making decisions about where we're going to go. That doesn't mean we don't use it as sort of like a list of marching orders. Like, okay, the order in which things appear in the wish list, we'll do this and this and this and this, because we do need to make a lot of sort of creative decisions about what this game is going to be, and those decisions ultimately we're responsible for those decisions on the team, and we need to make those calls. But absolutely, I mean, I don't know, Randy, you were nodding as I started to answer. Like, we do pay attention to that, and it matters to us what people are looking for, even if we can't give people exactly what they're asking for all the time.
Absolutely. Keep all that coming. It's invaluable as designers working on a live title to know what people are looking for, where their interests are. Even if we can't deliver exactly like Geoffrey's saying, if we can't get you exactly what you want, knowing that you want it is important to the decisions that we make and the things that we focus on.
Yeah. And by the way, I look at it too, and I'm not on the State of Decay 2 team. So there's all kinds of different ways, different people who might have an interest in what you're all asking for. So there you go. Liam has got kind of a UX question. If infestations are from plague hearts, then why are they green on the map and not red or an orange tone? Now, some of them are an orange tone. The ones that are going to attack your base are definitely orange. But
yes.
did some thought go into like potentially recoloring them, and how did that come together?
We did accessibility comparisons just in terms of color coding. I don't know if you guys have noticed, we kind of use red a lot. So for red colorblind individuals and players, adding yet another like a salmon-y, like we added a salmon for the dormant plague hearts. Like we even in our attempts to avoid adding more red, we did add more shades of red. So just finding anything on the color spectrum that isn't reserved on State of Decay 2. Green we use for harsh like emerald green we use for like mission headers. There's a lot of color that is used everywhere just because it's such a big game. There's so much UI that we just found a clean, readable version for people with all sorts of color blindness. And we wanted to make sure that you could see the infesting hordes pop really cleanly because they're interceptable and they're really the metric of, they're like the little progress bar for the plague heart and fighting back against you, right? Basically.
Yeah, and it's not just for like people who are colorblind, but also people with other kinds of like low vision, vision impairments. Like having to be this dramatic contrast between different colors of things on the map can probably really help folks for whom the seeing every single pixel is not really an option. Let's see here. So Quintarius Quincy, we should correct a misconception that Quintarius got. They asked, did they just confirm that you cannot lose a survivor during a siege? No, I think that Brandon was talking about the fact you couldn't lose a survivor by sending them out on a mission, right?
Yes. You can't lose a survivor if you leave the base. They are. So there's two kinds of sieges, right? There's the in-person siege where you're there and you're fighting, and then there's the siege that gets kind of simulated, and we send these new messages out that tell you like, so-and-so got injured defending the first wave, and your blank facility broke in the second wave. You lost Y resources in the third. It's kind of the way that we simulate the siege now. So it's a bit more in depth and it's more by wave. But one of the potential wave consequences is not that so-and-so just dies while you aren't there.
So yeah, so if you do decide to let your people at your base handle the siege on their own, they will not die, but there will be other costs that you pay. And so there's like reasons to come home to prevent those other costs, but you're not coming home to save the lives of your people because that's not at stake from the siege system. And that's not a change from the, like originally, like if you also stayed away during a siege, during the old kind of siege, I believe that randomly killing characters was also not a thing we did then. We would just charge you a bunch of ammo and damage your base.
Yep.
Well, and just to go back to what Randy said earlier about the mantra for this update was talking about things that were within the player's control. And if the player chooses to stay away from the base or just can't make it back in time because, your car broke down and you're way down here and your base is way up at the north, and you just don't have time to get back to your base, we shouldn't necessarily kill someone in your community because you're already struggling and you may lose the survivor you're struggling to get home with. So yeah, anyway, in-base consequences versus out away from base.
Okay, yeah, so I had originally misread what Quintarius was talking about, and so it sounds like Quintarius did zero in on something that is absolutely true. But it's not something that has changed since the previous version of the game. It's just something that maybe it's a little bit more prominent now that sieges are a more integrated part of the experience. Let's see here. So, Sidechat the Grey asked a similar question about like, are there any dangers to a player who is out scouting for infestations? It sounds like we said no. You send somebody out to scout an infestation, you're not putting their lives at risk. Just confirming that's right?
Correct.
And then let's see here. Rio Kuxian and I'm probably spelling that terribly wrong, and I'm so sorry, asks, I don't know if it was covered, but how much do outposts affect siege timers or waves, if any? Does the location of the outpost affect it more? Like if the outpost is closer or further away from base, will it affect how sieges behave? So does the placement of your outposts affect sieges? Aside from the fact that they might, for instance, if you have the mind, they could stop hordes from propagating. Is there any other effect that they have, or are they just kind of separate from the timing of sieges and hordes?
And there's also bait, which also could probably pull them away as well.
Okay, so those tools that you have, those options that you have on the actual things, those you can use those to affect. But basically, there's not like counting the number of outposts and then slowing down the number of sieges. There's no feature like that running in the background.
No.
Seijiao, go ahead.
But one thing that I would point out is that the tactical placement of your outposts is important. Like if you'll notice in this, I lost this outpost early on because I forgot to re-up the mines. However, that outpost, which is just south of my base, blocks off the entryway from the most likely entryway of the hordes that are coming from the plague hearts to create siege sites. And so any hordes that would create infestations that would be close enough to be siege sites are going to get destroyed on their way to try to create them. So like there is a way you can just completely shut off an entire part of the map.
So you can cleverly use outposts to block the hordes and prevent siege sites from accumulating, especially just depending on where you're settling, what the pattern of roads and access is. You could have some options there, but it's not like there's a blanket effect that they have. It's more of a tactical placement effect that they have.
Correct.
And actually, talking about those options you have on outposts, Seijiao had noticed that apparently there are some. They said there's some power outposts that have lures and some that don't. Do you know what might cause some outposts to have some of these options and some not to have those options?
I do, but Randy might too.
Randy's nodding. Let's say, Randy, do you want to try to give that an answer?
Yeah. Certain outposts are like the cell tower. There's not really, a lot of physical area around it. So for things like bait, or mines, they can be a little awkward. The signal disruptor being on there makes a ton of sense. So you're going to see things like, certain facilities didn't make sense to have mines around them or this or that. So it's usually very specific, and it's only a couple, I believe, that are non-standard.
Speaking of the signal disruptor, Warbucks wants to know, does that affect the entire map at once, or does it have a radius?
It is the entire map.
It is global.
So you do not need more than one.
On your map. No, because I don't believe the effects stack. If you wanted to have two, so you could always have one within reach, sure, but yeah. There's no strategic reason to have two signal disruptors.
Is it Raneth Cord wants to know, is it possible, especially at lower difficulty levels, to actually have two plague hearts next to each other and turn on a signal disruptor and kill one heart without waking the other heart? Or is a heart death so powerful that it'll definitely wake up a nearby heart no matter what you do? Or is it...
That's a good question.
Question mark.
Heart death is one of our most powerful triggers, so I could see it going either way. I'd have to double check.
Okay, so it's possible that there could be enough things you could stack up to make that be suppressed, maybe, but I probably wouldn't bank on it because it's such a powerful trigger.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. And, okay, I think final one. This is the last question that I'm going to let everybody go. Warbucks wants to know, can sieges break the infirmary specifically? Are there any facilities that are immune to breakage during a siege?
I don't think so. But he did ask a question of what happens to all the people that are checked in when it breaks, which is a fantastic question.
They get checked out.
Yeah, so,
I want to say it boots them out, right?
Yeah, I mean that would probably be one of the harsher consequences for abandoning your base if you've got some people that are like being held stable from blood plague, and then your infirmary takes a hit. Those people could die as a result of a siege. Warbucks might have discovered the way that somebody could die because of a siege, but it's a pretty specific situation.
You may have. It might also be whitelisted in there to work differently. On our end, it's called destroy facility, which is
makes sense.
You know, I mean, it does, but there might be something in the script that prevents or has a special case for handling infirmary that just isn't obvious to us when we script it. So I'd have to double check to be 100% sure. But I think all facilities in general, like what happens if a facility is being built or upgraded while it gets broken, you know, I think in general, anything in progress gets canceled, and I want to say it boots them out of the infirmary, but don't quote me on it.
All right.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, that wasn't me. That was Brandon.
Oh, it was Brandon. Sorry.
I was saying, I'm pretty sure it does, because like that was a thing before this update as well.
Right. I think that was all baseline behavior for destroy facility, which should already have been handled a long time ago.
Oh, hey, you just added somebody to, you just got a follower named Cord, who's named after an old friend of mine, another game developer. That was cool. Anyway, we have kept these people way too long, and this is one of the longer streams we've done, but I just, you know, we got so many good questions coming in from the chat. I just really wanted to make sure we didn't just abandon all you folks. So thank you for hanging out with us for this long. Thank you for all of the support from the audience that went into making this thing even possible, because I mean, you know, this is one of the longest amounts of time we have ever spent on an update. I mean, I think when we were working on Homecoming, we spent a pretty long time on Homecoming before we released it. I think this went even longer, but a huge part of that was the fact that it wasn't just our team internally that was doing it. You folks out in the audience were playing different versions of this, giving us feedback, letting us know, you know, what was working and what wasn't. And so much of this is built on your backs. We really, really appreciate everything that you folks have done.